Hey everybody, welcome to Play Like a Jet Zone right here, and I'm your host, Paul Esden Jr., aka Boy Greene. Welcome to this live stream. Again, if you're just joining us for the first time, or you're a new listener or an old listener, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We do live pregame shows and postgame shows all season long, all year long. Let's dive right in because we've got some breaking news to discuss here. We're going to preview Jets Colts today, but let's start with the breaking news, and that was from Adam Gase earlier today. Let's go right to it. And again, real quick, this banner behind me was made by El Chapo of Flags. You can do it. Thank you for subscribing, Matt C. Really appreciate it. And also, you guys can comment in the live feed any questions, and we'll answer them here live on YouTube. So drop those questions in. Thank you so much, Matt Z. Again, this banner behind me is made by El Chapo of Flags. I want to give a huge shout out to him. Edward Delgado, diehard Jets fan, the Play Like a Jet Zone banner. You can get a custom banner or flag made for your man cave. Make sure you check him out. Again, El Chapo of Flags on Facebook. Again, before we get into this full preview of Jets Colts for Week 3, breaking news per ESPN's Chris Mortensen live on Sunday NFL Countdown. New York Jets head coach Adam Gase is, quote, being looked at internally by the higher-ups this week after hearing noise from outside the organization. Again, fans on Twitter, fans in general, the media even picking fun at Adam Gase as well. Because of that noise outside the organization, the Jets, again, are looking, quote, internally at Adam Gase. In other words, what does this mean? The Jets play the Colts today at 4:05. And again, we still have our pregame show live here at 12. And then the Jets are on a short week for the Denver Broncos. By the way, quick shout out, Play Like a Jet Zone, the pregame show and postgame show for all your New York Jets coverage this year on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. So set your calendars, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification so you don't miss a video. So we'll be doing our pregame show live on Thursday at 7. So make sure you mark down your calendars for that later this week. But what this means is if the Jets look non-competitive, or if they lose one or both of these games against the Colts today or the Broncos on Thursday, Adam Gase's head could be rolling. That is the news from this morning from ESPN's Chris Mortensen. And I want to give you guys another nugget here from my notes here on something Rich Cimini said earlier today in terms of the non-competitiveness. Now, obviously, the Jets have an 0-2 start. That's not great. But here's the alarming part about the 0-2 start. The Jets have been outscored in the first halves of these two games 42-6. And not only is that minus 36-point differential the worst in the league, but it's the worst by any Jets team since 1996. And if you've been a fan of this team long enough, you know that was the 1-15 year. So you don't ever want to be compared to a 1-15 season. So it's been bad. Here's some more context on that. It's only the 8th time since 2000 a team has been minus 36 or worse. Of the previous 7, only one, the 2005 Minnesota Vikings, won more than 6 games. So this team has looked non-competitive, and that's non-competitive in the first half. As Rich Cimini noted in his piece, this isn't Alabama and Troy. As much as we want to make fun of the Jets, that's on the coaching. That's on preparation. That's on getting this team together. And the fact that you can't even get your own guys to compete in the first halves of these games is embarrassing. Now, again, these two teams were very good, Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers. But nonetheless, it's embarrassing, man. It's pathetic. And now finally it seems like Jets ownership is listening. The thing I would like to jump in and say is I wish the ownership would have been slapped in the face by some of the other alarming signs. Not that people just happen to be criticizing Adam Gase. So at least Christopher Johnson's listening. I guess it really doesn't matter how he's listening. And here's my big thing for today, and I'm jumping over here to YouTube, seeing all your comments. Home Slice 1998, what's going on, Boy Greene? It's Austin from Facebook. Thanks, Jets cover the 11.5. 100% I do. But again, maybe, and this is always when we tell whether a coach we think is going to make it or not, it's whether players rally around the guy. So this report comes out. And the Jets players will say they don't listen to the media noise from the outside. But let's be real for a second. Let's be honest. They all hear the noise. Joe Douglas even mentioned it before the year that the Jets players are pissed at all the low expectations and things. Apparently, those were right on course. So obviously, the Jets players listen. So they heard that report from Chris Mortensen earlier today. You better believe that heading into this game. That, again, the Jets ownership is going to be looking very closely at these games. We're going to know something about this Jets team after today. Are they going to play for Gase, or are they giving up? I think that's a big thing that we have to keep an eye out for, because if they've given up, Adam Gase's head could roll. But I love the 11.5, to be honest with you. And I'll talk about this more later, home slice, a.k.a. Austin. But I'll tell you this. For me personally, I think there's no way they can't cover this 11.5. The Colts, and again, we'll get into this in more detail, but just to answer your question, again, continue to drop questions and hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification so you get all these videos. And you can comment in the live YouTube feed. That's the one I have in front of me if you have questions on the podcast. The Colts lost week 1 to the tanking Jaguars. And here's 2 nuggets from that. First off, the Colts didn't punt in that game. And number 2, the Colts out-yardaged, I don't think that's a word, but they out-yardaged the Jaguars by over 200 yards, and they still lost. And then week 2, they absolutely decimate the Minnesota Vikings. I think a lot of that was that elite defense they were playing. But to me, I don't think they're as bad as that week 1 Jaguars game, but I also don't think the Colts are as good as that Vikings showing. I think the median is truly something in the middle, quite frankly. And I think the Jets can more than cover this 11.5 spread. The other thing that doesn't make sense to me, I think the Bills are a better team than the Colts. I think the 49ers are a better team than the Colts. Yet, neither of those spreads were as large as the 11.5 it's ballooned to. On my radio show, I only got the 10.5. We print our sheets out normally on Thursday. I do all NFL picks against the spread for the Man Shout Show, Boy Greene. And we had a 10.5 line, and I loved it. I would have loved even more the 11.5 line. I think 100% they cover. But the one thing, before you lay your money down on that to make some green, the only thing I would say is I think this report is going to polarize the players one way or another. They're either going to fight like hell for Adam Gase to keep him as a head coach, or they're going to fold like a lawn chair, and it's going to be another ugly showing today. So I think it's one or the other. So that's a thing I would certainly keep in mind. Thanks for the question. Home slice. So let's get into this Jets-Colts preview here again. Adam Gase on the hot seat. Actually, before we get into this preview, I do want to say something I teased on Facebook and Twitter. I think this game is all about letting Sam Darnold cook. That's become a popular phrase with Russell Wilson this year, let Russ cook, in terms of opening up the offense and letting him do things. I think, quite frankly, Adam Gase has done himself a major disservice. When you look at so far this season for Adam Gase, obviously the Jets have been banged up. We'll get more into that later during our injury report segment. But they're banged up. They're missing guys. Why would you hamstring Sam Darnold, your franchise quarterback? For instance, the play that's getting a lot of hubbub this week is the 4th and 1 play in the 49ers game, where it seemed like Sam Darnold could have hiked the ball and fallen his limp body forward and would have gotten a first down. But as we found out after, the Jets decided to use a third-string running back and Josh Adams to try to convert. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. And after the game, the Jets, the media asked Sam Darnold, Adam Gase, yo, why didn't you just do a quarterback sneak? Apparently, Adam Gase doesn't believe in quarterback sneaks. Thanks, Adam. And Sam Darnold said, I couldn't change the play, basically. I don't have that freedom. Why would you hamstring your quarterback and say he doesn't have the flexibility on some plays to make those adjustments? Putting handcuffs on your quarterback is the worst thing you could do. You want him to be comfortable. You want him to do things he's comfortable with, and that's the key. As a quarterback whisperer, not that I'm one, but Adam Gase claims to be, he should be fitting the offense to Sam Darnold, not the other way around. It's not square peg, round hole. A good coach adapts his system to his players. Adam Gase has not done that so far. And this is why I think let Darnold cook today. First off, the Colts run a lot of zone coverage, and I think the Jets can kind of take advantage of that, and I think they could take some deep shots. Here's a couple of nuggets on Sam Darnold. First off, Gase has called an extremely conservative game, and he called an extremely conservative game last week. Sam Darnold did not have a pass attempt over 20 yards last week. What's going on? Again, that's great if you're the 2009 or 2010 Jets when you have an elite defense and when you have an elite running game. Then it's a lot easier to just play keep away from the defense and not make any huge risks. It's easier to do that when you're those teams, but obviously the Jets aren't those teams. And by the way, continue to drop questions. I'll answer those in a little bit. I see them popping in, but I'm just on a rant right now. But keep dropping in those questions. I'll answer those before the show's over, I promise. But first off, again, you don't want to hamstring your quarterback. You want to let Darnold cook. That is my theme today. That's the thing that hit me this morning that I'm like, you know what? That's what I want to talk about on Play Like a Jet Zone. That's the big thing. So no 20-plus yard pass attempts last week. And again, that can only work if you're flawless or you have elite other pieces of your game, like I said, whether or not the offensive line is elite or the defense is elite, which neither are for the Jets, although I would say the offensive line for the Jets is a bit of an improvement. Here's another fun fact so far for the Jets. They're the only team this season in the entire NFL out of 32 teams that has yet to hold the lead. Let that simmer for a second. And the other reason I say let Darnold cook is Sam Darnold has gone 4 straight games without multiple touchdown passes. That ties the longest streak of his career. He's also has the second lowest yards per attempt in the entire league, only ahead of Joe Burrow, who was the first overall pick, who's a rookie at 5.9 yards per attempt. Again, those are terrible numbers. And also the Jets are trying to avoid their second consecutive 0-3 start. That has happened only one other time in franchise history. That was the 1980 and 81 seasons. And in 81, they rallied to make the playoffs. It's hard to feel that confident for the Jets, although the analytics, in fairness, with 7 teams making the playoffs on each side, say that the Jets should have a fair shake. So with that being said, I think the key for today's game is to let Darnold cook. I think it's to open up the offense. Obviously, the Jets are banged up. We'll get into the injury report in just a second here because it's very important for the rest of this conversation, and we'll get to it. But we'll get into specifics. They're out their top 3 receivers. They're out their star running back, Le'Veon Bell, still cannot return. He's not eligible to return until the Arizona Cardinals game week 5. And then the Jets will be down 2 of their starting offensive linemen. So it's not ideal. So let Darnold cook with what he has. Chris Herndon, this is a huge game for the Unicorn to see if they can get anything from him. So that's another thing I would certainly pay attention to in this game. And that, to me, is going to be the big difference here. And that's the one thing that I wanted to say about that. Let's get more into this Jets versus Colts game. This is the first time this season we have a late start for the Jets-Colts game. That is going to start at 4:05. And, again, I want to give another shout-out this week. We do have a short week coming up. The Jets play the Denver Broncos on Thursday Night Football. That game will kick off at 8:20. We'll do our pregame show coming up at 7 o'clock. So, again, one more time, make sure you hit subscribe and hit that little bell notification so you never miss an episode. This podcast and video vlog, a little bit of everything, is, again, presented by 2 sponsors. First off, kind of the TOJ Studios here. Turn on the Jets. Thank you so much. Also, Edward Delgado, El Chapo of Flags. If you like this cool custom banner, this was perfectly customized. I gave Edward my idea, and this is what he came up with. This is my Jet Zone podcast every Wednesday, and then Play Like a Jet, part of the TOJ. You can create custom banners, El Chapo of Flags on Facebook. And my other sponsor, who's absolutely terrific, is a local delicacy here, and it's Greene's Oswego award-winning chicken wing sauce. It's terrific. A lot of great flavors. If you want to support me, support the wing sauce. It's great. It's cheap. They're only $10 for a nice mason jar of wing sauce, and it's great forever. You can put it on burgers, wings, whatever you like. They got great flavors. Louisiana Lightning, garlic parmesan, and bee sting and El Diablo. If you want more information, it's in the description of this live YouTube video and will be posted after the fact as well. There's a number to text, and you can make orders, and they can ship them to you. Again, that number is 315-406-8081. Again, 315-406-8081. Greene's Oswego award-winning chicken wing sauce. Make sure you hit them up. Again, by supporting them, you're supporting me. And just tell them Play Like a Jet Zone or Paul sent you. I'd appreciate it. Let's get let's answer these questions here before I dive more into the pregame show. Home Slice 1998. Do you still believe Sam Darnold is a franchise guy? As a Jets fan, are you out on him? I would just flip the camera, but right here is a fat head of Sam Darnold. I believe in Sam Darnold. I believe he's the franchise quarterback. But quite frankly, he's got to overcome the crappy circumstances around him. Okay, obviously the play calling's been trash. There's injuries all over the place, which, again, we'll get to in a minute, I promise. And he has to overcome that and show something, show some signs of life. And if you have a good enough quarterback, they can win you games. And it's up to Sam Darnold, despite everything going on around him, to make sure the Jets are not in the top 3 picks of the draft. Because if they are, they got a tough decision to make, whether to trade back or take a quarterback, which will be tempting. Because Adam Gase is not going to make it through the season if the Jets have a top 3 pick. There is no way in hell that Adam Gase is still here. Hell, as you just heard at the beginning of this show, that Adam Gase could be fired if things go awry either this game today or on Thursday night for the Denver Broncos matchup. So something to keep an eye out for as a potential new head coach. I believe in Sam. I think he's shown flashes. Now, some of it is offensive play calling and crappy weapons, but you can't just absolve Sam Darnold of all of the blame. He's made a couple of rookie mistakes this year, whether delay a game coming out of a TV timeout. That's unacceptable. The horrible interception to Matt Milano in the Buffalo game was terrible. 49ers game was just so conservative. It's hard to nitpick anything, but he just didn't try to do enough. Again, I think the mentality from the coach was play not to lose instead of playing to win the game. And I think that really hurt Sam Darnold as well. But I believe in him. But again, the last we're in week 3. The next 14 games of the season is his audition to prove that the Jets should exercise that fifth-year option after this year. Again, for those just joining us, drop in questions in the YouTube live chat, and I'll answer them here on the show. We're also doing our Jets Colts preview today. All right, /1998. Would you rather have Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold moving forward? Easy for me, Sam Darnold. And it's not just because we have Sam Darnold, the Giants have Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones doesn't take care of the football. The 18 fumbles last year, losing 12 of them, is a gross albatross of a number that I am not interested in. Sam Darnold certainly had his problem with turnovers at USC, but I love Sam Darnold's ability to keep plays alive. His improvisation skills you can't teach. I just think he has the it factor to me. And in fairness, I haven't seen every snap of Daniel Jones' career as I have Sam Darnold's, but no. I would rather have Sam Darnold. I just want the team to put pieces around him to make him successful. But thanks for all the questions, guys. Keep dropping them in the YouTube live chat. Those are terrific. And I've been teasing it for a while, so we'll wait on the storylines. Let me jump right into the injury report here. So let's go for the Jets. It's a long one, so get your popcorn. Jamison Crowder is out for this game. He still has that hamstring injury. And I want to say this before I go into all the injuries. With the Jets playing on a short week on Thursday Night Football, it'll be very tempting for the Jets to rest a bunch of these players coming up in that game as well, because of the short week, to give them extra rest and preparation time for that Week 5 Arizona Cardinals game. So something to keep in mind. Jamison Crowder is out. Brashad Perriman is out. So those are the top two wide receivers for the Jets. And Denzel Mims, obviously, is still on short-term IR. So the top 3 wide receivers are out for the Jets. Ashton Davis is out, the talented DB from California. George Fant is out for this game. Quincy Wilson is out for this game. And here are 3 players that are, quote, questionable heading into this game. Braxton Berrios hurt his hamstring earlier this week. Connor McGovern, the Jets center, hurt his hamstring this week. Nate Hairston is questionable as well. But from what I've heard, Connor McGovern will not start this game. He's almost an emergency backup. So the Jets will be without their starting center and their starting right tackle. Not great. Chuma Edoga likely to step in at right tackle, and former Indianapolis Colts player Josh Andrews, who's a guard-center combo, is likely to start at center today for the Jets. There's no other way around this. It is brutal for the New York Jets. They also don't have Le'Veon Bell again. He is him, Denzel Mims, and Blake Cashman are all allowed and eligible to return per the new IR rules Week 5 for the Arizona Cardinals matchup. And we'll see if that's when they show up. Some of these names, again, especially Berrios, McGovern, and Hairston, could be ready for the Broncos game. Again, they're questionable heading into this one. But, boy, it's brutal, man. There's no other way to put it. This Jets offensive line, I thought, has been stout for the most part. They've given a lot of opportunities for Darnold. Mekhi Becton has been a superstar. He has been absolutely terrific. He's lived up to the billing of being the 11th overall pick. He's been a home run. So far. He's been terrific. But, man, all these injuries, eventually it's got to catch up to you. I'll be intrigued to see what the Jets' game plan is today, considering all these injuries they have. And, by the way, a couple of other notes. Lawrence Cager was promoted from the practice squad, the big boy from Georgia. Man, I'm intrigued. The other thing about just roster management real quick that I don't like, the Jets are heading into this game with only 4 wide receivers and 4 cornerbacks. If any injuries happen like last week when they only had 2 healthy bodies, they could be in some big trouble. Hopefully, with the reduced bodies at wide receiver, they involve Chris Herndon a little bit more in the game plan, and also for Lawrence Cager. Hopefully we get to see some pop. A lot of Jet fans are excited about Lawrence Cager. Let's go to the Colts injury report. Quarterback Rocky Ya-Sin is out. Linebacker Matthew Adams is out. He was also placed on IR, so he's out for a minimum of 3 games. Wide receiver Paris Campbell on IR. He's likely done for the year, but again, there's some hope that he could come back later in the year. And same is said for Malik Hooker, the talented safety from Ohio State. Tore his Achilles, done for the year. And this other injury I'm going to mention happened week 1, but I think it's important to note Marlon Mack, running back for the Indianapolis Colts, also torn Achilles, done for the year. Terrible injuries, which means Jonathan Taylor is who the Jets will be facing at running back, the talented running back from Wisconsin. Jack Doyle is questionable for this game. If Doyle is limited or out of this game, look for Mo Alley Cox. You probably heard him if you're a fantasy football fan. He had a huge day last Sunday against the Vikings. He had 5 catches for 111 yards. A terrific player that showed a lot of pop last week. We'll see if he's the same guy the Colts decide to lean on this time around. So there's your injuries. The Jets are obviously a little bit more banged up, to say the least, than the Indianapolis Colts. But those are the injuries, and this one certainly plays into that 11.5-point line that Home Slice 1998 brought up earlier in our YouTube live chat. Couple of storylines to watch out for. It's a Super Bowl III rematch, baby. New York Jets, Baltimore Colts, Broadway Joe Namath delivering the Jets a guarantee, delivering on that guarantee and getting them the Super Bowl. This is always a storyline in this game. And while it's over 50 years later and all the pieces have changed, that's always a historic nostalgia part of this series between the Jets and the Colts battling for that AFL supremacy, which ultimately led to the merger. But history lessons for later, but that is obviously a cool, nostalgic storyline for this game. And let's be real here. In modern times, we just talked about old times. Now let's shift it to modern times. The Jets have absolutely dominated this series regardless of who is playing. The Jets have won 4 out of the last 5 matchups dating back to 2011, including a recent bloodbath of the Indianapolis Colts. So they've won this matchup, whether it's Jacoby Brissett, Andrew Luck, doesn't matter. The Jets have actually had the Colts number here as well. But here's the thing, and I mentioned this earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. This Colts team, to channel a little late Dennis Greene, they aren't who we thought they were. And again, after the first 2 weeks of play, they're 1-1. That's one more win than the Jets have in this game. But in the season opener, they lost to the tanking Jaguars. They out-yardaged them by over 200 yards. They never punted in that game, and they found a way to lose. That was horrible. A horrible start to the year. Then in week 2, they completely go Jekyll and Hyde and go to the other side, and they obliterate the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of people, myself included, were very high on the Vikings going into this year with elite defense, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, all these players on this team I was very high on, but they got obliterated. The defense looked exceptional last week for the Indianapolis Colts. But here's why I channel Dennis Greene and say they aren't who we thought they were. The Colts are not as good as the team last week, and they're not as bad as the team week 1. I think ultimately they rely somewhere in the middle. So I think this is a very winnable game for the New York Jets. And again, it's this Colts team, this 11.5 line is a facade. It's an oasis. I don't believe in this 11.5-point line that currently exists. But what I do believe in is all the weird connections between these two franchises. First off, Rex Hogan, who was the Colts vice president of player personnel under Chris Ballard in 2017 and 2018, is now the Jets assistant general manager under Joe Douglas. That has laid the groundwork for a lot of roster maneuvering, whether it be trade or signing free agents between the Jets and the Colts. There are several former Colts players on this roster. Let me run through them. You have Henry Anderson, Josh Andrews, Terrell Basham, Pierre Desir, Matthias Farley, Frank Gore, Nate Hairston, Thomas Hennessy, the long snapper. A lot of people forget about that trade. Thomas Hennessy has been terrific for the Jets. Quincy Wilson, also Arthur Millette is on injured reserve, and Dante Moncrief and Ross Travis, who are also former Colts, are on the Jets practice squad. So obviously a lot of connective tissue here between the Jets and Colts. But the biggest connective tissue here between the Jets and the Colts, of course, that Sam Darnold Quentin Nelson trade from a bunch of years ago. The Jets had the 6th overall pick. They decided on a St. Patrick's Day weekend, a month out from the draft, that they were going to trade up from 6 to 3 to guarantee they'd get one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the draft. We all remember Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold. And oh yeah, that guy named Lamar Jackson went last. He looks pretty good as well. So out of those quarterbacks, the Jets guaranteed it. Now let's just take a gander back at that trade for a minute as we're kind of exploring these storylines here on Play Like a Jet Zone. So Sam Darnold obviously hasn't been a bust, but he hasn't really been a superstar either. He's shown flashes, but he hasn't been consistent enough. Again, some of that's on him, some of that's on his situation, obviously. So, but for the Colts, Quentin Nelson has been an all-pro, and many people say he's a future Hall of Famer the way he's been playing. So he's been terrific, and the Colts have arguably the best offensive line in all of football. They're just terrific. Anthony Costanzo is a top 10 left tackle. At guard, they're looking good. They have Braden, who was one of the Jets' second-round picks that they got, is a nice young right tackle on the other side. And then Quentin Nelson's a superstar. So the trade worked out great for the Colts, and we'll see if it works out for the Jets. Again, I said it at the time, but we could say it again. If Sam Darnold turns into the franchise quarterback that the Jets believe he is, and so many NFL analysts out there believe he is, it didn't matter what the price is because franchise quarterbacks, it's a quarterback-driven league. It means so much more than anything from that perspective. So the package was a lot. They gave up the 6th overall pick and 3 second-round picks, 2 in that year's draft. They got one of those from the Sheldon Richardson trade, and the second-round pick the following year's draft. So, again, we'll see ultimately what it means. This is a huge year for the New York Jets and Sam Darnold. All right, let's go to some storylines, some matchups to look out for. T.Y. Hilton versus his banged-up Jets secondary. Here's the thing. T.Y. Hilton has been rough, to say the least, to start the season for the Colts. He dropped a huge 40-plus yard touchdown last week versus the Vikings. And so far this year, he has putrid numbers, 7 catches for 81 yards, but he could be on the cusp of a breakout. Here's kind of a funny story that maybe some Jet fans may have missed this week, is he had this funny moment when his grandma called, T.Y. Hilton's grandma called him out of the blue on the phone and told him he's not playing well and, quote, doesn't look like her grandson out there on the football field. Grandma Gam called out T.Y. Hilton, saying, yo, I got you on my fantasy, T.Y. Speed it up, man. Play some action. And T.Y. Hilton was kind of honest in the media saying, man, Grandma was right, man. I'm playing like crap. I need to step up. So maybe T.Y. Hilton for a huge game day today. I don't know. But let me just say I threw that one out there first. But, again, in all seriousness, T.Y. Hilton is the number 1 wide receiver for this Colts team. And now Paris Campbell out. And looking at this offense and Phillip Rivers and obviously T.Y. Hilton haven't been on the same page thus far. T.Y. Hilton could be a problem. He brings speed for days. He's a very intriguing player. And again, a guy who hasn't really popped yet. I think he could pop today. That is a huge matchup to watch out for if you're a New York Jets fan in this game today. Again, kickoff set for 4:05. Another player that has kept me up at night all week in this preparation. I can only imagine what it means for the Jets. DeForest Buckner. The Colts are going to line this dude up everywhere. He could be on the inside. They may line him up on the outside on some tackles, whether it's Mekhi Becton or not George Fant because he's out for this game, Chuma Edoga. If I'm the Colts, let me just say this. Mekhi Becton is a rookie, so maybe you'll play him a little bit there. We'll get into another matchup more in depth of who will probably be on Mekhi Becton for the game. But in terms of DeForest Buckner, they can line him up inside. They can line him up outside. He's been terrific. The Colts thought so much of him. They traded their 13th overall pick for him in this past year's draft in April, and they traded it for him. The 49ers ended up using that pick to replace DeForest Buckner. Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina. The Colts got DeForest Buckner and gave him a huge fat extension. He dominated the Vikings, and again, that should keep Adam Gase and Sam Darnold up all night, especially down 2 starters on the offensive line. In the interior, Connor McGovern's gone, so DeForest Buckner could line up straight over the center, or right tackle, Chuma Edoga. Again, I've had Jim Nagy on, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, on my podcast, The Jet Zone, and he thinks that Chuma Edoga can be, quote, a building block for the future for the Jets, but he's shown flashes, but obviously not enough to lock down that right tackle spot. We'll see how he performs against a Colts defense that has plenty of weapons that certainly could put the Jets on the edge. So DeForest Buckner, circle him on the sheet. He could have a huge day. The Jets are going to have to do some creative things to keep him in line. But Mekhi Becton is likely going to be lined up across Justin Houston. And obviously Mekhi Becton has looked terrific. He's been throwing guys around. He's graded among the top 10 offensive tackles in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. But the thing that reminds me of Justin Houston, this veteran, reminds me of the matchup he had week 1 against Jerry Hughes. Again, kind of that crafty veteran with a ton of different moves in the toolbox and different moves, spin moves, and being able to bull rush. Mekhi Becton obviously is talented. He's been a superstar. That could be something to watch because Justin Houston may be able to pull a move or two out. Remember back in training camp, Mekhi Becton kind of got fooled by Jordan Jenkins and then Frankie Louvu. And Frankie Louvu is not an all-star pass rusher. Neither is Jordan Jenkins for that matter. And they got the better of Mekhi Becton. But the good thing is Mekhi Becton learned from his mistakes. He didn't get beat by the same move twice. That could be something to watch as well in this one. But likely Justin Houston lined up on Mekhi Becton. But watch out for DeForest Buckner as well. Another guy who could cause some problems for the New York Jets. Another one to watch out for is Nyheim Hines. Now, Jonathan Taylor is the starting numero uno running back for the Colts. They like to mix and match their guys. Nyheim Hines was hardly used last week, but I think that was game plan specific. This time around, I fully expect the Colts to attack the Jets' linebackers out on the outside, whether wheel routes or quick flares or sometimes a potential quick out from the running back who kind of does a nice chip and then goes out for a pass. That's another thing to keep an eye out for in this one because Nyheim Hines could be a mismatch on some of these Jets linebackers in coverage. So he didn't really get used last week. I could imagine him getting used a lot more in this respect. And then just some more thoughts on this matchup. Philip Rivers is the Colts quarterback. And I want to make this perfectly clear. They had Jacoby Brissett, and obviously they didn't feel confident enough in him. They chose Philip Rivers. I don't want that point to go understated here. They chose Philip Rivers. And arguably the greatest quarterback offseason in history, right? Tom Brady, Jameis Winston, Ryan Tannehill, the draft, Joe Burrow, Tua. I mean, out of all the guys they could have picked from, they had the 13th overall pick at one point this offseason. Okay? With all the quarterbacks they could have had. They could have had anyone they wanted. This was the richest quarterback. Cam Newton. I mean, they had their choice of anyone. This was the largest quarterback free agency trade. Andy Dalton, right? And he was out there. And Nick Foles. And again, whoever you want. Whoever. Doesn't matter. They picked. They being the Colts picked. Said, you know what? Philip Rivers is our guy. And obviously Frank Reich, formerly of the Chargers. So they have a lot of connective tissue there. To me, that was a mistake. I think Philip Rivers is over the hill, man. I didn't like what I saw from his end with the Chargers. Tom Brady, I thought, had more in the tank. A lot of people criticized Tom Brady, how he looked in New England at the end, but I think Tom Brady still has some of the tank. I think Cam Newton still has some of the tank. Philip Rivers, I don't think so. I think that dude's over the hill. I think if I'm Greg Williams, okay, I'm sending the kitchen sink. I am blitzing the beep out of Philip Rivers because I think he can be had. I think he can be flustered. And he has more interceptions and touchdowns so far this season, for Pete's sake. I think the Jets can take advantage of that, create some short fields for the offense, and help a brother out because obviously Adam Gase can't do it himself, so help him out with the defense, complementary football. Good defense leads to good offense. That's what I would like to see. I think Philip Rivers is over the hill. I think he's toast. I think he's done so. And I think the Jets can certainly take advantage from that perspective. Remember, last week, by the way, we called out a couple of players that we needed to have big days, and guess what they did? Mekhi Becton had a huge day. And, again, he was facing a stout 49ers defense that had Nick Bosa at the time, and he did very well against Nick Bosa before he went out of the game and out for the season. Same thing, by the way, with Solomon Thomas as well. But Mekhi Becton had a huge game last week. The other guy we called out here on Play Like a Jet Zone, Quinnen Williams. Then he had his career day. He had the best game of his career, 2 sacks. He forced a fumble. He just made a lot of plays happen, and that's the player we saw back at Alabama. Exciting stuff on the Quinnen Williams train, the Quinnen Williams hype train. So it seems like whoever we call out here on the show immediately has a big day. So I'm going to call him out. Sam Darnold. Okay, let Darnold cook. It's not just on Darnold. It's on the coaching staff to let Darnold cook and take off the handcuffs. It's year 3. Let this man call his own plays. Let this man thrive. And to think about this, the 2 touchdowns on the season for the Jets from Darnold, right? The Jamison Crowder breakaway touchdown in Buffalo was apparently an audible by Sam Darnold. The Braxton Berrios touchdown in that 49ers game, where at the end of the game he escapes the pocket, cool throw, he's running to the left, chucks it to the right. I mean, it's just classic vintage Sam Darnold, right? So both of those calls were Sam Darnold improvisation. So Adam Gase doesn't have a touchdown this year. Noted. Adam Gase sucks. Gotcha. Boop. So what I would say is let Darnold cook. Let him do some things. And that leads me to the next player I'm going to call out, Chris Herndon, man. Well, the unicorn. If he can't have a game today, when is he going to have a game? I was the biggest Chris Herndon fan before the season. You know what? I've been underwhelmed. I've been disappointed. Herndon had a fumble. He dropped a touchdown pass. I mean, he's had a whole lot of nothing. All his yardage and catches so far have been in garbage time, and even that's not that impressive. Herndon, I'm talking to you. I'm looking right into the camera. Chris Herndon, step up to the plate, man. Help Sam Darnold out. Help your quarterback out, man. You're talented. You got suspended last year. You got hurt last year. You played only 10 total snaps. Help Sam Darnold out. You're finally back. Don't waste your opportunity. I'm looking right at you, Chris Herndon. I know you're watching this pregame show before your Jets-Colts game. I know you're watching in. I know you hit that subscribe button. Chris, come on, man. Hit subscribe on this offense. Help a brother out. And that's what you should do for Sam Darnold. So calling Sam Darnold out and Chris Herndon out. And I want to call one more man out. A bit of a follow-up here. I want to call out Marcus May. Marcus May, week 1, had the career day of his life. He was terrific. He was making plays, and he could have even had that interception. Last week, man, he was the ghost of Jordan Reed was beating around Marcus May. You should be embarrassed. Your family should be embarrassed. Like, good Lord, man, Jordan Reed hasn't done anything in the NFL for years, and the ghost of Jordan Reed is haunting you in your sleep. Marcus May, wrap up. And that's just kind of in general for the entire defense. Let's wrap up. Let's wrap up today. Let's get some tackles. The Jets defense isn't an elite defense. So when you miss tackles, you only make it worse, okay? At the very least, tackle guys when you have them in your vicinity. Take them down and get the job done, okay? Because when you can't even do that, that's when we get into problems all over the barnyard, man. Because then a 5-yard play could turn into a 10-yard play, 15-yard play, 20-yard play. And by the way, I know I complained about this on the postgame show last week. Again, we'll have the postgame show right after the Jets-Colts game. Again, 4:05 kickoff today. So mark that in your calendars. Normally, we being Jet fans, are just used to 1 o'clock kickoffs. This one is going to be the 4:05 kickoff. So just keep that in mind, and we'll have our postgame show after that. But if the Colts face a 3rd and 31, can we please play some defense on that and not allow a 55-yard run by a running back who's been out the last 2 years with injuries, okay? If we could do that, I'd be fine. Again, I want to circle back here to wrap it up, play like a Jets on the pregame show for Jets-Colts. Couple things here. First off, the Adam Gase report that we talked about at the top from Chris Mortensen on the Sunday NFL Countdown. Again, Jets management is, quote, internally looking at Gase and really judging him based on this week and the short week against the Broncos. And apparently, if the Jets look non-competitive, as they have had through the entire season thus far, or they lose these games, Adam Gase's head could be rolling as early as week 3 or week 4. Which I'm sure would make a lot of Jet fans happy. And I'll be honest, I've never loved the Adam Gase hire from the beginning. He's the one guy I didn't want, and so far he's been terrible. So, to me, it feels, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here. I claim to be an eternal optimist on this show, but the Jets are 0-2 right now. And if they're 0-3 or 0-4 after the first 4 weeks of play, it's time for Adam Gase to go. Quite frankly, I've seen enough through the first 2 games that has just made Darnold regress and terrible play calling and bad roster management, bad clock management, all of the above. I'm ready to move on from Adam Gase, but that could be coming sooner rather than later, apparently according to that Chris Mortensen report. Again, I'll also open up the mailbag opportunities. If you're joining us live on the YouTube chat, you can join us and ask any questions you'd like. A couple of people have already asked questions. Drop that below in our YouTube live chat. I'll answer those questions here before we get out of here. Jets, Colts, fantasy football, whatever you'd like. Feel free to drop that below, and I'll answer that here on the show. Also, if you're new to the live stream, hit subscribe. We have live pre- and post-game shows every week here on Play Like a Jet Zone, a brand new project for me that I'm really excited about. Also, if you prefer the audio podcast, the Jet Zone is a weekly podcast every Wednesday previewing the Jets, talking Jets, and also previewing the next game. We'll probably have the Jet Zone podcast on Tuesday this week because of Thursday Night Football, so I'll let you guys have some extra time to listen to this week's podcast. So we'll probably do that interview and post that on Tuesday. Just a shout out and heads up for all you Jet Zone listeners out there as well. Again, I do want to give another shout out to my 2 wonderful sponsors. Again, more information is in the description of this YouTube channel. And without these sponsors, I couldn't be doing this broadcast. So I want to thank each and every one of them. First off, this banner you see behind me where it says Play Like a Jet Zone has the big updated Jets logo, my Jet Zone podcast logo, and also Play Like a Jet. This banner was custom created by Edward Delgado. He's a diehard Jets fan. He's got a great business. It's called El Chapo of Flags. It's on Facebook. You can just search for it. If you want custom flag, custom banners for your fan cave or your tailgate, They've got the cheapest prices around with professional quality every time. It's a proud sponsor of Play Like a Jet Zone, your weekly stop for the best pre- and post-game coverage for the New York Jets. So thank you to Edward Delgado Chapo Flags for this wonderful piece of merch for the Play Like a Jet Zone studios. Thank you, Edward, for that. You're a great friend, and I appreciate your support on this podcast. And also, one more podcast tip, and it also helps with your tailgating. I know we're not really allowed to tailgate right now, so why don't you tailgate from home? Are you missing Greene's Oswego award-winning chicken wing sauce, or have you not even tried it yet? Are you a listener to me that's not in New York or upstate New York and you want to try it? Well, I've got the hookup for you. It is fantastic, and it's back for a limited time. Text 315-406-8081. Again, 315-406-8081 for more information. This is wing sauce that they can ship you. I'm going to run you through some of the flavors. They're terrific. Louisiana Lightning. It's a melting pot of flavors, an equal mix of traditional hot wing sauce, some garlic, cloves, some Creole chili pepper sauce, and a sweet barbecue sauce. Very nice. Garlic Parmesan is one of my favorites. There's butter, 2 kinds of garlic, grated Parmesan cheese to create a unique, updated blend on an original recipe, one of my favorites. I also have bee sting, which is a sweet and spicy sauce, clover, honey, authentic sriracha chili sauce, and boom, some sesame seeds for that extra added crunch, baby. And finally, Diablo. And I will warn you, this one's not for the faint of heart. The heat from this spicy sauce comes from fresh habanero peppers, and there's a rumor it's powerful enough to wake the undead. Each of these sauces I just mentioned come in a 16-ounce container, and it's only $10. So what are you waiting for, guys? If you support me, Boy Greene, or Play Like the Jets Zone, or you're a diehard Jets fan, reserve yours today, and you can get your order in by texting 315-406-8081. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you for the post-game show. Hit subscribe. See you then. Hopefully we're recapping, the first Jets win of the year. God, I only hope so. We'll see. Thanks, everybody. See you then.